cards in the main. However, if Shaynor is able to land a copy of Prognostic Sphinx, that could be very difficult for Danny to deal with.
Not the easiest card for him to get off the table. I think that Shane's deck is much better against aggressive strategies because you have Caryatid and Courser Crewfix to shore up your early game. But I think in a control matchup, I'd rather be on Danny's side.
Yeah, keep in mind Shane has no counter spells in the main deck, so Danny gets to know that his cards just get to resolve right away. And with that, we are underway. Shane on the play, both players keeping on 7s here. Starts out with Temple of Malady. And no real early plays out of Danny's side. Shane does have cards like you mentioned, the Courser and Caryatid, which he can look to.
I think those cards are also problematic for Shane in the matchup because it means that Danny's sweepers are real cards and Shane's are not.
Yeah, Danny does have, if you look at the sweepers, Danny has 2 copies of Crux of Fate in the main deck, and other than that, his sweepers are cards like Bioblight, which he has 4 of. On Shane's side, he is playing his 3 Bioblights and actually has 3 Drown in Sorrow in the main deck. Shane's really looking to beat a deck that's not the one that Danny's playing.
And we do see a lot of aggressive red strategies when we come to Texas, typically. You know, Festus Resendez, obviously, and a lot of the other players as well. So making a bold metagame call here and trying to capitalize on all the beatdown decks you anticipate, I respect it as a metagame call here, but in this matchup, game 1, Shane's going to be in a lot of trouble, I think, because a lot of these cards just do very little or in some cases nothing at all.
Yeah, the Satyr Wayfinder there for Danny does hit a land. It hits a Yavimaya Coast. Now remember, both these players do play copies of Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, so if you can stick one of those early, it seems pretty relevant. We actually see Danny drawing one on the 3rd turn here. But none of that for Shane. And on Shane's side, actually, he has 4 Heroes Downfall, but outside of that, does not have very many ways to pressure a Planeswalker. And Danny's just going to go ahead and go for it. Remember, no counter spells in Shane's deck, not at least in the main, means that Ashiok resolves. It mills for 3, and it's going to mill. It actually does hit a creature. It hits a copy of Sylvan Caryatid.
Danny's deck is much more of a pure control deck, whereas Shane is something of a board control deck. Right. And typically, you know, Magic Theory 101 says you want to be the pure control deck and not the board control deck in that kind of matchup.
Well, Shane does have a copy of Heroes Downfall for the Ashiok, and then he'll make a Caryatid of his own. Yeah, what that will do is force Shane to be the aggressor in the matchup.
And it's pretty hard to be the aggressor when your threat base is Courser Crewfix, Prognostic Sphinx, and some Planeswalkers.
Yeah. With 5 mana sources in play, lands 6 and 7 hand. Actually, this is interesting. So Shane has 4 lands in play and a Caryatid, lands 5, 6 in hand, and his hand is Ugin and Garruk Apex Predator. So it looks like he does have the threat base to work with. Now, Danny does have cards like Heroes Downfall and Disdainful Stroke, but needs to have them in hand.
This is about the kind of draw that Shane would want to have. I don't know if it's going to amount to very much because Danny has some clean answers to those sorts of cards, but this is about the recipe you'd be looking for.
Yeah, Shane casts Courser of Crewfix, revealing Thoughtseize on top of his deck, plays a land from hand and gains a life, and he'll pass that. Thoughtseize could maybe clear the way for these Planeswalkers.
Potentially. The problem is that both of them need to be in play for a while to be generating a huge advantage, and you know, even if Danny doesn't have an answer on the spot, if he finds one down the line, a lot of the work can be undone.
Yeah. End step there, Sultai Charm will take care of the Courser of Crewfix. Go back over to Danny. We do know about a Thoughtseize coming next turn. And right now, Shane's hand looks to be all removal spells and a Dig Through Time.
Yeah, Danny's pretty well stocked here. Shane not in a position to Thoughtseize and play a Planeswalker next turn.
We'll say that's my kind of hand. I like that. And hopefully you'll Dig Through Time for another Dig Through Time and a kill spell.
Or a counter spell. A Dissolve and a Dig.
Yeah, that's great. Love it. And enough lands and cards in graveyard that those are all options right now. Maybe even, well, yeah, actually, I was wondering if he had a Treasure Cruise there. It looks like Danny Jessup does. He has the 4 digs and then 1 Treasure Cruise, one of that 5th card drawer. And we'll get a look at it. It's going to be Thoughtseize from Shane. Danny will dig in response. And what I like here, Danny actually paying all the mana for it, only delving 3s, using those cards, very much valuing the cards in his graveyard as a resource.
He has to. If you watch Gerard Fabiano or anyone else play the Sultai control deck, you realize that the graveyard is definitely taxed. There's Murderous Cuts, Tassigars, a full playset of Dig Through Times, a Treasure Cruiser 2. So it's very important to keep your graveyard as stocked as you possibly can.
So this is all in response to Thoughtseize. Dig Through Time looks like it's going to get another Dig Through Time. And now he gets to pick the second card. That's options of Ugin and Thoughtseize. And he'll get Thoughtseize, it looks like, as the next card. And I actually really like that Foresight on Danny's side. You'd be tempted to get the Ugin here and just, force Shane to take it. But another Thoughtseize back seems like the best kill spell on this board.
It's definitely the safest.
Bioblight, Thoughtseize, Treasure Cruise. And actually, it's not a determined, it's a Disdainful Stroke. And Shane may have to take that card.
This is a pretty good hand here for Danny, given what's going on in Shane's hand. There's 2 answers to the Planeswalkers and Disdainful Stroke, plus a Thoughtseize, and a Treasure Cruise, which Shane is probably also loath to let him have. He's got to at least hope that he can punch through one of these Planeswalkers, but Treasure Cruise has a good shot of yielding Danny something that can answer the second Planeswalker.
And the draw for Danny was Silumgar. He's going to go ahead and cast Thoughtseize. Does see the 2 Planeswalkers, Garruk and Ugin. Right now, Shane has the mana to cast Garruk. He's 1 mana off of Ugin.
And that might be the tiebreaker here. Danny might say, I'll take Garruk, and even if Ugin is powerful, Shane has no guarantee of being able to play it next turn.
It's a real danger here, though, for Danny. He knows that if one of those Planeswalkers resolves, Danny's not yet able to answer any of them.
Well, he's got a fair number of turns. Ugin is
just not actually a threat.
It's going to be bolting for a little while, so you find a Hero's Downfall and you're good.
Yep. Takes the Garruk. Looks like he may take a turn off to just Treasure Cruise then, try to find that downfall. He plays 3 copies in his deck. One hasn't. I don't believe he's used any of them yet. Yep.
You can also find a Disdainful Stroke 2, very good in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, if he taps out, he can also find his own Garruk, which is a great answer for Ugin. So he's just going to tap out here to cast the Treasure Cruise. So not going to dig for a counterspell, just will dig for a way to destroy a Planeswalker. You see him, he does find the Disdainful Stroke. Does Shane have the land? He does not. He finds Hero's Downfall. And now that Danny gets to untap, he drew a Dig Through Time and a Disdainful Stroke there, and that seems really huge.
Yeah, now he's got the Ugin covered. He's got another card drawer to work with, and
he has his win con too. He has his one of Silumgar.
So you can see Danny's starting to pull away there. There was a 1-turn opportunity for Shane to rip a land and make this a game, but now it's going to be tough.
And he'll go for it. Polluted Delta tapping for black thanks to Danny's Urborg. Shane will go for it, but Danny has since found the Disdainful Stroke. Counters the Ugin, and now Shane's hand is nothing but 1 Hero's Downfall.
Yep, and Danny gets to have the control player's dream turn of counter your turn and then draw some cards.
I mean, it's the 3rd blue Delve card drawer that Danny's resolved. That's going to be really rough in this control matchup. Because a lot of Danny's cards are able to trade 1 for 1. That just makes it so hard for Shane to dig out of this.
And you can see the advantage that Danny has in the matchup here. He's drawn 2 copies of Bioblight, which is not a card he really wants in the matchup. But even still, the Dig Through Times and his Treasure Cruise and all that stuff, it's pulling him ahead even though he's drawn some dead cards.
Yeah, and especially you see that game 1 in these control mirrors where a lot of the players' cards tend to be dead. We'll see how, it'll be interesting to see how this changes post-sideboard, when Shane's not drawing things like Drown in Sorrows. Ashiok back to work for Danny. Takes Courser of Krufix, Bioblight, and a land. And it just seems hard for Shane to see how Shane would recover.
Yeah, there's not really a good thing for him to sneak through at this point, as he's down a lot of his key Planeswalkers and just doesn't have a lot of powerful cards to draw in this spot.
Yeah, Danny's hand, Disdainful Stroke, Bioblight, Hero's Downfall, Hero's Downfall. Or sorry, 2 Bioblights, Hero's Downfall, Disdainful Stroke. And that Silumgar that he hasn't even used yet. So Hero's Downfall from Shane will take care of the Ashiok. We go back over to Jessup. Maybe it's time for the Dragon.
Might as well. It's a pretty safe spot for it.
He does have it covered with Disdainful Stroke now, and I think that was what he was waiting for, is to have that counterspell magic up. And there you go, Silumgar, the Drifting Death, 3/7 flying hexproof.
It's a big one, pretty good against Elspeth, and pretty good against spot removal.
Yep, Courser, the play from Shane, shows carry added on top of the deck. Shane will have none of that. He's going to go ahead and fetch away.
And I think Silumgar is a pretty good example of what we should be anticipating when Dragons of Tarkir come out, because I read this card and was not really that impressed by its tournament level chops. But once this thing's in play, it's pretty powerful. Still pretty good for 6 mana, and there's a lot of cards coming down the pipeline that look to have a pretty similar story.
Dig Through Time, the top card for Shane. That's a good one, but may only get Disdainful Stroked. As we go back over to Jessup, he can kill off that Courser of Krufix now with a Bioblight thanks to Silumgar. And now the question will be whether or not Shane can ever stop this Silumgar.
Well, I don't think he can really kill it. I mean, he's got
Ugin.
Yeah, he's got Ugin.
But his Ugin's gone.
Right. And no copies of Crux of Fate in his deck.
I don't think he can get it off the board.
Yeah, I think this is just here to stay.
Yeah. He could block it with Prognostic Sphinx.
Okay.
That's what he can. So we see with Shane, he's going to, it does the swing attack, the attacks for 3, shrinks the Courser. Danny finishes that off with a Bioblight. Now Shane will go through for Dig Through Time. And great discipline on Danny's side. Rather than Disdainful Stroking the Dig Through Time, we'll just wait and Disdainful Stroke the cards Shane gets.
Well, I think he's waiting for Shane to resolve it first because, you know.
You have to delve first.
Yeah, but I think he is going to stroke this.
Yeah, once the delve happens, it will get countered. Shane left with just a Hero's Downfall once again. Yeah, both players just with kill spells in hand, but Danny's the one with the dragon in play. He'll go ahead and swing for 3 more. Shane down to 11.
Slow and steady.
Yeah, Shane, no kill spells for the card. And even if Shane draws his answer, which is a Prognostic Sphinx back to block, Danny can maybe even just use these kill spells on the Sphinx to force Shane to tap it.
It's not something you typically see. Very rare does someone have such an edge that they can afford to slog through Prognostic Sphinx that way, but I agree. It's looking like that's the shape this game has taken.
Yeah, Danny uses Sultai Charm, draw 2, discard 1, gets rid of one of those Bioblights. Or rather, the second Bioblight. The first one actually he managed to get a card with. So now his hand, a Garruk Apex Predator and 2 Heroes Downfalls. I think Danny deciding if he wants to cast Garruk. The danger would be if Shane has another Ugin in his deck. That would be really dangerous.
It's just a very good insurance policy right now.
Yeah, I think if he knew the list, if he knew Shane's list, he'd be okay with casting Garruk there. Sultai Charm to draw 2, discard 1 for Shane. He does draw himself into a Kiora the Crashing Wave. Once again, Shane's deck not able to answer that Silumgar.
Yeah, just trucking along, Prognostic Sphinx really being the only thing.
Draws an extra card off it, draws into Bioblight. And this is, we've seen this Drown in Sorrow in Shane's graveyard, Bioblight's in his hand. He really wanted to play against the mono reds and the aggro decks of the world.
He is really well suited to beat aggressive strategies. I mean, this is a really...
Drowns, Bioblights, Sultai Charms, Downfalls, Caryatids, Coursers. This is a great recipe for just beating up little creatures.
Yep. It's a gutsy metagame call. Right now, he's catching the bad end of it. I would imagine most of his sideboard is geared towards getting this stuff out of the deck, but we'll find out in a moment.
He's boarding north of 10 cards, I think, in this matchup. He certainly has 10 cards he'd want to board out.
Yeah.
And here's trying for another Dig Through Time. Danny does not have more counter spells. He'll let that one resolve. Because we know there just isn't much that Shane's drawing to.
It's interesting because if you're in Danny's spot, this is a pretty bad draw. You are sweating a little bit over this, but we know the reality is Shane doesn't even really have anything to dig to in this spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does find that Prognostic Sphinx, but Shane down to 2 means those kill spells, Prognostic Sphinx doesn't really have hexproof.
Yeah.
Danny can just tap it. And Urborg from Shane.
Now your opponent's tapping 5 and you're thinking, oh, please don't be Crux of Fate. Like then you have these cards in your hand. Nope, just this thing.
Danny will be fine with that. You may even see him Hero's Downfall on end step. Yeah, reading the card. I think he just wants to make sure that this does work. Yeah, he'll go ahead and downfall it on end step. Shane can give it hexproof, but that taps it. And this Silumgar tech should be lethal. And there we have it. Game 1 over to Danny Jessup.
Not surprising. The way these decks are built, game 1's going to go to Danny a huge percentage of the time.
Yeah, it just felt like Shane didn't have the right cards in his library. We saw Danny resolve 3 draw spells, not even really able to turn the corner because Shane could then got to draw his own draw spells, but Shane wasn't drawing to anything.
No, Shane got some pretty fortuitous draws there towards the end of the game and still couldn't catch him up because his deck had no way to catch up in the matchup.
Yeah, well, let's look first. Okay, looking talked about how Shane, if you're going to build this skew in your main deck, you got to have a good sideboard. Tell me about Shane's.
2 Thoughtseizes, a Dark Betrayal, a Silumgar, 2 copies of Negate, 2 copies of Tasigur, 3 Disdainful Stroke, an Ashiok, and 3 copies of Rakshasa Death Dealer. Great sideboard here. I think the Death Dealers are very good for this matchup.
Is there any card you don't like?
I don't like the Dark Betrayal, and the Silumgar is borderline.
But so we're looking at boarding 13 or 14 cards for this matchup.
And that's a good starting point here because the 3 copies of Drowned Sorrow have to come out. The 3 copies of Bioblight have to come out. I would imagine you want some number of the Courser Caryatid slots taken out of the deck.
Yeah, Caryatid, ramping doesn't seem to be the primary concern here.
So I think Shane's going to do really heavy sideboarding. He's got a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. What I want to talk about Rakshasa Death Dealer because it's a sideboard card. If Danny's the kind of player who boards out his Bioblights, and I would expect he would, how many ways can Danny actually answer a Rakshasa Death Dealer?
I mean, he's got the big stuff, the Planeswalkers, the Sweepers. If Shane's leaving up mana, it's really problematic, and Danny might not have many clean answers at all. And part of this is just Shane's trying to overload the downfalls, If your Death Dealer goes unchecked, awesome, and if it eats a downfall, that's also fine because it opens up the door for your Planeswalkers and such. The real concern is you're getting hit with Bioblight because that doesn't really have any other targets in the deck. But the most likely scenario is Danny takes out his Bioblights for game 2, and Death Dealer has a really good shot of either going all the way or at least dealing some damage and absorbing a downfall.
Yeah, it's interesting. Post-board, these decks are going to look a lot more similar to each other. They'll be working with about the same tools. Looking at Danny's sideboard, a lot of the cards we're seeing in Shane's main deck, cards like Drown in Sorrow, I guess Farika's Cure, those were in Danny's sideboard, so he just gets to not board them in.
Yeah, 3 Corsair Crufix, 2 Drown in Sorrow, 2 Farika's Cure, 2 Negates, 2 Tassigurs, Disdainful Stroke, Aether Spouts, Pearl Lake Ancient, Kiora the Crashing Wave. I think Kiora, Pearl Lake Ancient, Disdainful Stroke, Tasigur, and Negates are all fine here. The Coursers might come in if he's anticipating that Shane's removing a lot of his creature removal, but it's going to be more or less the same thing. Post-board, these decks look pretty similar. Shane's just digging himself into a hole with his setup for game 1.
Now, one thing I do want to look at is back when we had blue-black control mirrors, the presence of 1 Pearl Lake Ancient in Danny's sideboard seems to be pretty relevant.
Yes, it's just another thing where if the game drags out for a very long time, it's very, very potent. I think it's a hard card to play in the main deck because if you draw it against a beatdown deck, it's almost a dead card. It's not good in matchups where flying is involved, but in this sort of matchup, it's just another thing that's hard to kill, and both players are in the market for that.
All right, well, we are right now. They're getting ready for game 2 here. Shane will get to be on the play. We're halfway through March, and if you guys haven't heard about Star City Game Night yet, we want to tell you a little bit about this. This is a promotion that your store can run and make any night of the week of Star City Game Night. You don't have to run a special tournament for the event. You can make your weekly event at Star City Games Game Night. Finding out about it, what do you get for it? You get tokens and pins as prizes to your players. So in every single week. In March, that was the rat token. You see the pins on our jackets and these adorable little tokens there over on the right. I love them because when you see the token, it looks like a really cute guy until you see the bigger picture of just what's going on. It's too late to sign up for March. We actually now know our next month creature as well for game night. And this one, I'm a pretty big fan of. This is even cuter.
Have not seen it yet. So.
Well, if you have a problem with rats, you should go to our next token, which is the which is the kitten.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. So
it's playing with a hamster and a ball.
It's adorable.
StarCityGames.com/game night or contact your Star City Games organized play representative.
It's a creature cat token.
Holy crap. Get your hands on that. That is sweet.
Yeah. Learn more about StarCityGames.com/game night.
Man.
You're going to get to wear that pin for a whole month. Just think about it.
We've created the first SCG Game Night pin where my girlfriend is going to want a copy. We've finally done it.
All right. Going to the game 2, Shane on the play. He was on the play again, also in game 1. Now, we did see cards like, Sylvan Caryatid, not as strong in this matchup. How do you feel about Corsair Crufix, though?
I think it's fine. I think it's the type of card where game 1, it comes with a really high cost for a deck like Sultai Control to play because your opponent has some spot removal in their deck. Your deck is mostly about blanking those cards, and so Corsair, while powerful, is something that just eats a downfall when your deck's strategy is about blanking cards like Hero's Downfall. Post-board, where you anticipate a lot of those cards getting removed, Corsair Crufix is powerful for a control deck just in a general sense, if you assume that your opponent's taking a lot of their spot removal. And also in beatdown matchups, Corsair is a great tool to go to as well. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the Fabiano style of this deck to be playing it in the sideboard, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? You have a card that gains value as you go to post-sideboard games.
Yeah, no, it's a very sweet, flexible sideboard. It looks weird because Corsair Crewfix is, it's 4 copies in the main deck of all these different decks. But for a deck like Gerard Fabiano's Sultai Control deck, you don't want to just play a targetable creature game 1. You look at the creature base, it's 4 copies of Satyr Wayfinder. If that gets killed, who cares? The Silumgar is really hard to kill. And then you have Planeswalkers that will come into play and do something even if they die right away. Corsair is not like that at all. You need to stay and play for a couple turns, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for this deck to play game 1.
Now, that said, you still have to keep in your hero's downfalls, I would think, in this matchup, just because of cards like, I guess there are a lot of Planeswalkers, and Ashiok can be a problem.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, Shane opted to go on the draw for game 2. So Danny on a mulligan here. He's going to be on the play, so Shane is actually +2 cards.
And when you put your opponent on the play and they mulligan to 5, it is just, there's no better feeling. This is as sweet as it gets. So the logic here is the matchup's going to go on for a very long time. No one's going to get tempted out of this game. And because Disdainful Stroke is in the deck, you have a pretty powerful way of breaking serve. It's unlikely your opponent just jams some big threat, you can't answer it, and it goes all the way. Plus, your deck has a lot of removal. And the upshot is that you get an extra card. You're more likely to make your land drops. So you don't see it happen very often. I've seen Jerry Thompson be pretty liberal with putting his opponent on the play in control matchups post-board. But Shane breaking it out here right now with Danny going to 5 cards. If he thinks this matchup is about raw card count, he's in a great position to send us to a 3rd game.
Yeah, you see, Dan, I mean, it is hard to find really good 5-card hands with a Sultai deck. The challenge will be whether or not Danny gets to really play. This is the kind of hand where I think Corsair would be at its best.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the cards that for a low amount of mana can get card advantage. Most of the draw spells in these decks actually are these large delve spells, so you're not going to really hit them on mulligans.
And they get hit by negates and disdainful strokes, which both decks are packing post-board. Corsair Crewfix avoids both of those problems.
Yeah, Danny on 4, so we'll see if he gets to fight.
Yep. Gonna be tough.
Certainly, it's hard on a 4-card hand when you see cards like Pearl Lake Ancient in your opener.
Yeah, because both of these decks are about going bigger and badder post-board, they need a lot more land drops, and so naturally, mulliganing to 4 is a really rough place to start.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where he gets to go at here. Yeah, has some lands. He'll keep. Now, what do you think about Shane being on the draw?
In what sense?
Well, I guess just how he's obviously doing it because he believes this to be all about card advantage. And I mean, this matchup is do you like it?
I like being on the draw. I put myself on the draw a lot more in matchups where I feel like most of the resources are just going to bounce off of each other. It's hard to pull ahead, and it's about card advantage and making your land drops. Which, oddly enough, a lot of red mirrors have been like that historically.
Yeah, actually, red decks do a great job of they just trade with each other. Now, one advantage here, Danny may not get to play, but what he does get to see is Shane has a turn 2 Rakshasa Death Dealer, so he will get to know that Shane has that going into game 3, which may be as good as he can get in a Mull to 4.
It's still tough because, what are you going to do? Are you going to bring Bile-Blight back in your deck? That seems like a hard thing to do, but it is valuable information to have nonetheless.
Yeah, Satyr Wayfinder from Danny. I mean, what he's looking for on these mulligans is just land drops and then hoping that one of his threats matches up in a way that Shane can't answer.
I mean, he does have Tassiger in hand, so that's a plan. Tassiger goes unchecked, hopefully. I mean, it's unlikely. Shane's deck's got a lot of removal for Tassiger, but if it goes unchecked, you make your 4th land drop, you start drawing some cards, and you're right back in it.
And swing there by Satyr Wayfinder. Rakshasa Death Dealer hit in there, put Danny down to 18. Yeah, he may just go for that Tassiger. We'll see.
Well, he gets to put a 4th card in the graveyard right now, which means he gets to play Tassiger with negate backup. And Shane's hand is a Sultai Charm and lands. So we got a game.
Yeah, I mean Tassiger can generate plenty of card advantage too. And he has the 4 lands for it.
You know,
what a comeback this would be.
The most likely scenario here is that Shane untaps and like tries to use the Sultai Charm to get rid of Tasigur. That eats in the gate, and then you got a 4/5 in play. You start activating its ability.
Now there is the thing that Rakshasa Death Dealer could just start hitting Danny a bunch.
Yes.
Got to make sure, you know, that guy does a great job of just trading. And this may be a little too much. We do see a Thought Seize draw for Shane. And this is the difficulty, right? The Sultai cards are so great, just 1-for-1 trading. He can Thought Seize away the negate and then Sultai Charm the Tasigur.
Yeah, it was looking like, you know, if Shane didn't draw something really impactful this turn, that he would probably Sultai Charm the Tasigur, and then the negate gets it, and Danny looks like he's in pretty good shape, but this might be too much to overcome.
And Danny will let him take it.
Though again, look at how this sequence lines up. You probably want to Sultai Charm the Tasigur right now. Don't want that
He'll take the negate,
once.
land Sultai Charm the Tasigur.
That taps out Shane. Danny then gets to untap, and Hero's Downfall, the Death Dealer feeling so inclined. It looks like Shane's going to go down a different direction here. Looks like he's really committed to keeping the Death Dealer around, because if he taps out for Sultai Charm,
then Danny gets to downfall.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, he's in such a position of power that he can just afford to do this.
Well, I don't know if he's really in a position of that much power because his hand's fairly bad. It's just lands. And Danny's going to get 1 activation here off of this Tasigur.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the scary part to me, actually, is that if Shane Thought Seizes and just kills the Tasigur, then this gives Danny a free card.
Yeah, it's your nothing against his nothing, but you have way more lands in play. But that's still not by any means a lock for Shane to win the game.
No, not. I mean, considering that Shane was +4 cards this game, you have to. This is a great game for Danny.
Yep.
See here, cracks a land, and you're right. He's just looks like he has just 4 lands and a Sultai Charm. Death Dealer will swing. Danny end step is going to activate the Tasigur. Mills Ashiok and Downfall. I mean, what I like about Tasigur in these Sultai decks is that the cards are so generic and answer the cards so well that it's hard to get, you know, it's hard to mill something bad off Tasigur.
It's very rare. The only really bad hit for the deck is the Wayfinders. Everything else is substance.
So what I do like what Shane's done here is he's seizing on the fact, capitalizing on the fact that Danny is low on mana by just always leaving up Rakshasa Death Dealer. For the turn, Danny drew Disdainful Stroke, and he'll play another Satyr Wayfinder, gets to mill into a land. But it would take a lot. It takes a lot for Danny to ever kill this Death Dealer.
Yep, and that's part of the reason that Shane gave him the downfall. He's saying, I don't think you can really use this profitably.
Death Dealer swings, and Shane's going to take. Danny will take. He just takes 2. And another land drawn for Shane. His hand is just lands right now.
The problem here is this game is being played at a pretty slow pace. Shane's committing all of his mana right now to keeping the Death Dealer alive. He's not pumping at all. Danny is equipped with 2 chump blockers. So Danny, the way this game is shaping up, has quite a bit of time.
Right, and he has a Disdainful Stroke in case Shane found a business card. Which he did. Ugin is now in Shane's hand. Swing by Death Dealer once again. I mean, and if Shane even goes for the Ugin, Danny can just Disdainful Stroke, and then he gets the Death Dealer on top of it. He gets the Hero's Downfall.
Yep, and right now, Danny's doing just fine in the damage race, too.
Shane's going to go ahead and pump Death Dealer. We'll see if that's enough to get a Hero's Downfall out of Danny's hand. It is.
And a lot of this is a concession to mana. It's not looking like there's going to be many other spots for Danny to use this downfall, and he wants to be able to downfall and Disdainful Stroke in the same turn, so getting the downfall out of his hand now is pretty mana efficient.
And Danny's actually picked up a Pearl Lake Ancient in his hand, and his draw for the turn was Dig Through Time. This could be a huge turnaround for Danny Jessup.
Yeah, I think that Danny may just say, he might just take his lumps this turn. However much Shane wants to dump into that Death Dealer is fine, and that allows Danny to hold up Disdainful Stroke and cast Dig Through Time and really start pulling ahead.
Despite being down 4 cards, it feels like Danny has pulled even in this game. Death Dealer swings again, no pumps. It's Courser of Krufix now from Shane. Glance over at his top card. He still has an uncracked fetch land in play. His top card is an island. But Shane hasn't played a land yet for the turn, so this is a free island for him. He's going to go ahead and fetch. I believed it was a free island for him. Perhaps it was not.
Yes. It's pretty curious otherwise.
And in response to that activation, Hero's Downfall will be cast by Danny. Yeah, I don't think that was a free. I think he had not played his land yet, and Danny doesn't want him to get the free land.
Yeah, no reason to. He's going to use the downfall on the courser here anyway, because this allows him the mana left over to hold up Disdainful Stroke in case Shane does something. And if not, he can cast the Dig Through Time. Untap and keep trucking along.
So now Shane gets to go ahead and fetch, but he went ahead and fetched for a swamp and plays a land out of hand. And end step, Danny's going to go for Dig Through Time. Let's see if he can get something good here. There is no counterspell in Shane's hand. This will resolve.
A hand of just Ugin and downfall. And we already know Danny has an answer at the ready for the Ugin if he decides to pull the trigger on that.
And at 11-6, despite Danny's done a great job of raising this Rakshasa's Death Dealer.
Yeah, Shane's been very conservative with his mana. He's been committed basically all of it to allowing it to not get killed. But now the way the damage race is working out, the downfall is just as Fog, your Death Dealer, is allowing Danny to be just fine in the damage race.
Well, it's interesting. So the Rakshasa Death Dealer is, it's played out very interestingly. If you leave up enough mana for it, Shane has really shown that this guy can become practically indestructible in the matchup. But if you're leaving up all the mana to make sure that the Death Dealer never dies, then you're running into the issue that it's not actually dealing damage. It's just a 2/2.
Well, I think that the Death Dealer is really powerful in games where Danny's on some sort of Planeswalker plan because it's just so big at chunking through Planeswalkers.
Right.
In this sort of game where
you're racing.
Yeah, he's racing and he doesn't want it to get killed, but he needs to leave up mana for other stuff. It's just not doing a ton.
Yeah. Found 2 cards there. Draw for the turn was Opulent Palace for Jessup, and he'll put Shane down to 4 with these Satyr Wayfinders. And at some point, Shane's going to have to put on the brakes.
Yep.
Unless he just thinks Danny's out of kill spells, but that's a pretty risky one as well. And look at this is a card that actually Danny took off of the Dig Through Time, and I love this play. He took a Satyr Wayfinder.
It's a blocker, it's an attacker, and now he's got an untapped land that he took too. So he has access to play the Palace this turn, leave up Sultai Charm, Disdainful Stroke, what have you, and then an untapped land next turn, and the ability to cast Pearl Location.
And now Shane has to decide if he wants to Hero's Downfall Satyr Wayfinders. I mean, he's going to opt against it. But yeah, draws Polluted Delta for the turn, and this is, we find Shane Remelt on the ropes here.
And now, you see part of the problem here. Once Ugin got into Shane's hand, I would have been much more aggressive just dumping mana into the Death Dealer because your Ugin is, going to eat a downfall if your Death Dealer is not. Also, you have to, at some point, tap out for the Ugin.
And when you do, Death Dealer dies.
Whatever card you're playing around is now going to get the Death Dealer as well.
We see Ugin, and there's the Disdainful Stroke from Danny Jessup. And we pass back, just Death Dealer in play for Shane. He is at 4 life. Urborg, the draw from Danny. He plays land 7. He has Sultai Charm, land 8, and Pearl Lake Ancient in play. He does have 3 blue mana. He surveys the board here. And yeah, it'll be in a swing with everything. One of the Satyrs goes down. Shane is at 2 life. Draw for Shane. That's Thoughtseize. That's not a good one when you're at 2 at all.
Yeah, very good job for Danny getting down to 2.
End step Pearl Lake Ancient from Danny. Shane may have to just spend the Hero's Downfall to get that guy off the board.
Almost certainly, and he might have to do it now because he can't risk Danny untapping.
And countering it.
It's ugly. You don't want to do it right now because, at that point, Danny doesn't attack with the Wayfinders and...
Yeah, you don't get the free creature.
But Shane just basically dies if he doesn't get this to resolve, so he might have to do this, even though it doesn't look great.
That's what he'll do. We'll see Danny bouncing lands. He's going to... You see what a show of strength from Danny. It's not the untapped land he's bouncing the temples.
Yep. Well, he can take 1 untapped land. He's got nothing else to do. He still sets him up for, on turn 7, being able to Pearl Link no matter what happens. And he gets some scries in the meantime.
All the cards back to his hand. We're back over to Danny Jessup. In control here. Draws Sultai Charm for the turn. Full grip now.
A lot of them are lands, but yeah, he's stocked. Hard to remember that one of these players mulliganed down to 4.
On the play, too. Yeah. We were talking about this like this was certainly going to game 3, but what a turnaround for Danny Jessup.
Yeah, Danny's done just a great job of the scarce few resources he has maximized them, and I don't necessarily feel like the same thing is true on the other side of the table.
Yeah, Shane certainly on the unfortunate side of getting more lands than he bargained for, but had resources of his own. It just seemed like Danny was able to get around them. And draw 2, discard 1 from Danny Jessup. Finds Garruk Apex Predator, more lands, can discard some of his tapped lands. You see Opulent Palace, looks like it's going to be the discard off this.
Yep. And I believe at this point the only thing that Danny's hand allows him to do is cast a Sultai Charm. So now there's a question of, is there anything this turn that you can find that's very good? Or are you better off just waiting a little while and hope maybe Shane produces something that you can target with the charm?
Yeah, Prognostic Sphinx the draw from Shane. It's something that could stabilize as a blocker.
Yeah, Sphinx is not shabby, but it's still not going to be an answer long-term to Pearl Lake Ancient. We know that Danny, with the Sultai Charm, has the opportunity to tap down the Sphinx at least once.
Well, and the frustration for Shane is that he does have the long-term answer in his hand. It's the Thoughtseize. That's how he gets rid of Pearl Lake. But at 2 life, that's no longer going to work. The only life gain in Shane's deck post-board is those copies of Courser of Crewfix. So until he hits one of those, he can't Thoughtseize. And Prognostic Sphinx the cast for Shane. We'll see if Danny does anything on end step. He could tap the Sphinx with Sultai Charm. He could draw 2, discard a Sultai Charm.
Well, the awkward thing is about this Sultai Charm is that Danny's hand has 2 powerful 7-mana spells.
So you just won't get to cast it.
Yeah, it's hard. You know, the Sultai Charm is flexible. It has some different uses to it, but...
And we'll see if you, and I love this play. Tap the Prognostic Sphinx, and now it's Garruk Apex Predator that he puts into play. It's not the Pearl Lake.
Right, well, Shane's done nothing for several turns, so pretty good chance that the last card in his hand is a land or something he can't cast, and that's what it is.
And there you have it. Danny Jessup, 2 games to 0, takes down Shane Remelt in what has got to be one of the most unexpected victories in game 2.
A 4-card hand there is pretty impressive. I felt like in that second game, Shane never really had a cohesive plan for how he was going to use his resources. He was sort of going from turn to turn, responding to cards that he thought might be in Danny's hand, whereas Danny definitely had a game plan for how he was addressing the matchup.
Yeah, it did seem like Shane's game plan revolved around that Rakshasa's Death Dealer.